Hi, my name is Heather McKay, and I'm an occupational therapist and dementia care specialist. On behalf of ComForCare and At Your Side Home Care, I'd like to thank you for listening and learning about mild cognitive impairment. As you gather information about mild cognitive impairment and find ways to apply it in your own life, I hope you'll share your knowledge and experience with friends, neighbors, family members, coworkers. In our short time together, I'll share some information with you, tips that I've collected along the way in my own experience, working in home health, hospice, community-based practice, and dementia care education, as well as caring for a beloved family member of my own. These are some things that I think everybody needs to know about mild cognitive impairment, whether you're thinking about your own brain or supporting people that you know living with this condition. So help me spread the word. Here's some things that I'll share with you today. Let's look at the science behind mild cognitive impairment. Also, some hallmarks of the condition, like what to look for and what makes mild cognitive impairment distinct from normal aging and dementia. We'll examine the journey of mild cognitive impairment, in other words, if and how it progresses over time. I'll share some helpful home care strategies that have worked for families and professionals to create days that are more meaningful, safe, and pleasant for people living with mild cognitive impairment and their caregivers. Keep in mind, helpful strategies include things that you can try, but also some things to avoid. Imagine you're sitting at the kitchen table with a friend, just talking about dementia caregiving. After all, 16 million Americans are helping a friend or family member living with dementia. In fact, the majority of dementia care is done unpaid by families and friends. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if your friend asked you this question: what's the difference between regular forgetfulness and a little red flag that could signal mild cognitive impairment? It's actually a common question that I answer in presentations and consultations and these kitchen table talks every week. Let me share with you the quick explanation that I use that really gets heads nodding. Imagine you're sitting in the living room watching television and a commercial about coffee comes on. Well, here's how your normal brain works. You think to yourself, ooh, coffee sounds good. You head toward the kitchen with 5 to 8 things on your mind about coffee in a file called working memory. Well, if the telephone rings before you get to the kitchen, and you pick up that telephone and have a conversation with a friend on the other line, about your plans for the weekend and who's going to bring what and where you'll meet and what time, you're all going to be there. By the time you get to 5 to 8 pieces of information, coffee got kicked out. That's because in a normal, healthy brain, that working memory file only holds 5 to 8 pieces of information. So coffee got kicked out. You all know the feeling when you're standing in the kitchen thinking, what? Why did I come in here? That's normal. Coffee's now gotten kicked out and stored in short-term memory. But as you get older, it takes a little bit of time to retrieve it from short-term memory, so you're standing in the kitchen like a knot on a log. Now, in a normal, healthy brain, it may take some time. So what do? You head back to the living room. And as you get back closer to your seat, do you know what it feels like when it dawns on you? That feeling that the memory just fell out of the sky and hit you in the head, that's normal remembering. All of that happens in a normal, healthy brain. We forget things, we get reminders, and it comes back because we remember it. Here's the difference. In a person with some mild cognitive impairment, you may notice that he's sitting in the living room, sees the same commercial about coffee, and thinks just like we did, oh, coffee sounds good. He's got 5 to 8 pieces of information about coffee now in his working memory file when he's heading toward the kitchen. He'll pick up the telephone and have the conversation sound as good as we do. When he swaps 5 to 8 pieces of information, coffee gets kicked out. So far, we're the same. But it's on this transfer where the difference happens early on. There are some parts of the short-term memory file that just don't catch everything, so it doesn't get filed. Falls through the cracks. When he hangs up the telephone, he's standing in the kitchen like he's done a million times thinking, why did I come in here? But when he heads back to the living room, sits down and sees the commercial again, folks, you'd have to be looking for this. He'll see the commercial and say, coffee sounds good. I think I'll go make a pot. Now he's headed to the kitchen like it's the first time. Did you notice it's subtle, but the difference is no, oh yeah. When the information's not filed in short-term memory, he doesn't have that experience of, oh, it fell out of the sky like a reminder. These are some of the subtle differences between normal forgetfulness and a little red flag that something could be happening in the memory center. Don't be surprised at the kitchen table if your friend says, thank you, you're the first person to explain in words that are easy to understand and remember. Now you can zero in on mild cognitive impairment and share some more information, because people often ask me, Heather, how does mild cognitive impairment work? Well, first of all, we can call it MCI, if that makes it a little easier. If we look at some science behind MCI, we begin in the brain. MCI affects approximately 15 to 20% of people aged 65 or older, with a slight but noticeable decline in memory and thinking, beyond what's expected with normal aging. MCI is not severe enough to be diagnosed as dementia. I'll say that again. MCI is not severe enough to be dementia. But cognitive impairment can have many causes, and MCI is sometimes mistakenly diagnosed. For example, some medications can cause cognitive impairment, which could be resolved just with different or less medication. So, people experiencing cognitive changes should seek help as soon as possible for diagnosis and possible treatment. What causes MCI is not yet completely understood. Experts believe that in many cases, but not all, many cases the subtle changes in MCI are caused by the earliest stages of Alzheimer's disease or other dementias. Risk factors for MCI are the same as those for dementia, like advanced age, so we're talking about as folks get older, family history of Alzheimer's disease or another type of dementia, and cardiovascular disease. Let's name just a few hallmark signs or characteristics of mild cognitive impairment, MCI. Your friend at the kitchen table may be wondering how to recognize signs of MCI, so experts classify MCI based on noticeable changes in thinking skills. In the first class, or the first group, it's memory-related MCI, and that just means that it primarily affects memory first. A person may start to forget important information that he or she would just previously have recalled easily, such as appointments, conversations, or, recent events. But for a second group, that non-memory related MCI, this is MCI that affects thinking skills other than memory first, including the ability to make sound decisions, like judge the time or sequence of steps needed to complete a task, or visual perception, understanding what you see. Remember, in both types of MCI, the impairment's not severe enough to interfere with independent daily functioning. While people living with MCI, especially if it includes memory problems first, are more likely to develop dementia, MCI does not always lead to dementia. In fact, one systematic review found that 32% of people with MCI develop dementia over 5 years. On the other hand, studies have shown that between 10 and 40% of people with MCI return to normal cognition within 5 years. For others, MCI may remain stable over time. Speak to a doctor about ways of maintaining your brain, a healthy brain, if MCI is suspected. Treat conditions like high blood pressure, depression, or sleep apnea to help improve memory and overall mental function. People diagnosed with MCI should be reevaluated every 6 months to determine if symptoms have progressed. Now, I'm thinking of you and your friend at the kitchen table, and you're probably wondering, Heather, where's the good news? Well, how can we maintain our brains whether we have MCI or not? That's a common question. The good news is this. Over years of research, people with MCI, families, and professional caregivers of all stripes have discovered effective strategies to improve life for the person living with MCI and their caregivers. Many of the most effective home care strategies don't involve a medicine. So we call these non-pharmacologic approaches. After all, there's no magic pill to fix MCI. If you're thinking of maintaining your own brain or caring for someone with MCI, consider these strategies. First, it's helpful to follow a daily or weekly routine. Have you ever noticed how predictable routines help you manage stress? Well, stress goes down and brain function goes up. That's true for all of us. And someone living with MCI could really feel the benefit of that stress-busting strategy. So think routine, routine, routine. Here's some more tips. Stay socially engaged. Continue with familiar activities with support. After all, it's still a use it or lose it proposition. And explore new activities, expanding on your favorites with support. Use a medication box to keep pills organized. Explore high-tech and low-tech solutions for reminders. Leverage your preserved skills. Exercise at whatever level is healthy for you. Remember, healthy movement doesn't have to be fast or even on your feet. Slow walking or bending and stretching from a chair might be your just right challenge, and music can help. And finally, eat a heart-healthy diet. What's good for your heart is good for your brain. Because MCI impacts the speed of your memory and thinking skills, avoiding a few things can mean better days for the person and their caregivers. For instance, if you're living with MCI, don't expect to do everything exactly the way you used to. Cut yourself some slack. When you face a challenge, you can adapt. With a few modifications that work for you, you can do things in new, easier ways and maintain the activities that give your life meaning. Shifting your expectations for yourself can go a long way toward your health and happiness. And finally, if you're a caregiver to a person with MCI, because maybe they have other health conditions that require a caregiver, don't expect to do everything yourself. Caregiving is a team sport, so find your teammates. A final take-home message. For today, the ComForCare team is ready and willing to collaborate with you on strategies and solutions for your dementia care needs. People with mild cognitive impairment have unique needs and can continue to live at home, even if it progresses. Even an extension of 6 to 8, 12 months at home can benefit people with MCI and their families. At Your Side Home Care understands the nature of MCI and is ready to collaborate on strategies and solutions for MCI care needs to help people living well at home as long as possible. Keep in mind, if you'd like more information about something you learned today, feel free to contact your local At Your Side Home Care office for additional resources, support for family caregivers, and specialized home care for people living with mild cognitive impairment and dementia. Thank you.